The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Sterling penthouse. Each drop a small explosion against the glass. Clara Hawthorne stood in the center of the vast living room, her designer dress feeling like a costume, her engagement ring heavy as a shackle. Ethan Sterling circled her like a predator, his tailored suit sharp enough to cut. His jaw was set, eyes cold as the marble beneath their feet. "Let's get one thing straight," he said, voice low and dangerous. "This marriage is a transaction. Nothing more. Don't expect romance, don't expect affection, and definitely don't expect me to pretend otherwise." Clara's fingers curled into fists at her sides. The humiliation of the press conference still burned in her chest, where he'd announced their engagement like a stock merger. "You think I want this?" Her voice cracked but held firm. "You think I dreamed of marrying a man who treats me like a business acquisition?" He stopped inches from her face. She could smell his cologne, feel the heat radiating from his body. His eyes searched hers, looking for weakness. "Then why did you agree?" "Because my father is dying." The words ripped out of her. "Because our company is bleeding out. Because sometimes we do things we hate to save the people we love." Something flickered across his face, too quick to catch. "How noble," he sneered, but his voice had lost its edge. He turned away, pouring himself whiskey with hands that weren't quite steady. "You'll have your own room. We'll appear together when necessary. Beyond that, stay out of my way." "Gladly." The word hung between them like smoke. Clara moved toward the door, desperate to escape, when his phone buzzed on the counter. She glimpsed the name before he snatched it up. Vanessa. Their eyes met. His expression dared her to comment. "She's welcome to you," Clara said quietly. She was halfway out when his voice stopped her, rough and unexpected. "Your design work. For the Hawthorne interface." He didn't turn around. "It's brilliant. Even my team couldn't find flaws." Clara's breath caught. It was the first kind thing he'd said to her. It almost sounded like a compliment. Don't get used to it. But when she glanced back, she caught him watching her reflection in the dark window, his expression unreadable. 3 days later, Clara sat alone in her new office at Sterling Enterprises. The space was cold, impersonal, designed to make her feel like an intruder. She stared at her computer screen, trying to focus on work, trying to forget the hollow feeling of sleeping in a house that wasn't a home. The door burst open without warning. A woman glided in, all glossy hair and predatory smile. Vanessa Carter. Clara recognized her from the business magazines, from the way Ethan's shoulders had tensed when her name appeared on his phone. "So you're the wife," Vanessa said, perching on Clara's desk like she owned it. "I have to admire your courage. Or is it desperation? Can I help you with something?" "Just wanted to see what all the fuss was about." Vanessa's eyes traveled over her with calculated cruelty. "I thought you'd be more ... impressive." Then again, Ethan never did care much about his obligations. He's always been more interested in what he wants. Clara kept her face blank, but her nails bit into her palms. "And what would that be?" Vanessa leaned close, her perfume cloying. "Me. We have history. The kind of chemistry you don't just forget because of a piece of paper." Her smile turned vicious. "He called me last night. After you went to bed. We talked for over an hour." The words landed like a fist to the stomach. "How nice for both of you." It was. Vanessa straightened, smoothing her skirt. "Here's some advice, from one woman to another. Don't fall for him. Don't imagine you can change him. Ethan Sterling destroys everything soft that comes near him. It's what he does best." After she left, Clara sat frozen, staring at the door. Her phone buzzed. A message from Ethan. "Dinner tonight. 7 p.m. Client meeting. Don't be late. Not a request. An order." That evening she arrived at the restaurant dressed to kill. Armor in the form of a black dress and blood-red lips. She found Ethan already seated with an older couple, the Mitchells, potential investors. He barely glanced at her as she sat down. "My wife." "Clara, she's decorative." The casual cruelty stole her breath. Mrs. Mitchell's eyes widened in sympathy. Clara smiled. The kind of smile that cut. And Ethan's learning that decorative things often have sharp edges. She turned to the Mitchells. Ignoring the way Ethan's jaw tightened, "Tell me about your company. I'm fascinated by your approach to sustainable tech." For the next hour, she charmed them effortlessly. Discussing innovation and design with genuine passion, Mr. Mitchell was captivated. Even Mrs. Mitchell warmed to her. When they left, promising to sign the deal, Ethan finally looked at her. Really looked. "You didn't have to do that." "Do what?" "Make conversation. Or save your deal. You're more than decorative." The admission seemed to cost him something. "I know." She stood, gathering her purse. "The question is, when will you?" She left him sitting alone, something dangerous stirring in his eyes. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She wandered through the penthouse's empty halls, a ghost in her own life. She found herself in Ethan's study, drawn by the light under the door. He sat at his desk, tie loosened, looking more human than she'd ever seen him. Papers scattered around him, a half-empty whiskey glass catching the lamplight. "Can't sleep either?" His voice was tired, stripped of its usual edge. "It's hard to sleep in a prison. You think I'm not trapped too?" She moved closer, curious despite herself. On his desk, she saw architectural plans. A hospital. Her father's hospital. "What is this?" He didn't answer, just watched her with something like vulnerability in his eyes. "Ethan, what is this?" "Your father needs a specialist, someone who can actually help him." His voice was rough. "I've been arranging it. The surgery, the recovery, everything. The room spun." "Why?" "Because you were right." He stood. And suddenly, they were too close, breathing the same air. "You're sacrificing everything for the people you love. The least I can do is honor that." Clara's eyes burned with tears she refused to shed. "I don't understand you. I don't understand myself anymore." His hand lifted, almost touching her face, then dropped. The space between them crackled with something electric, terrifying. The moment shattered when his phone rang. Vanessa's name lit up the screen. Ethan's face closed off, the walls slamming back into place. "You should go to bed." Clara fled before he could see her break. But as she reached the door, she heard him reject the call. Heard the phone hit his desk with a sharp crack. In her room, she pressed her back against the door, heart racing. Nothing made sense anymore. The man who humiliated her in public was saving her father in private. The husband who wanted nothing to do with her looked at her like she was air, and he was drowning. Her phone buzzed with an email. From the company lawyer, she opened it, blood turning to ice as she read. The email detailed a clause she'd missed in the marriage contract. If the marriage ended within 5 years, Hawthorne Group would lose everything to Sterling Enterprises. Everything her father had built would belong to Ethan. She was truly trapped. And somewhere in this cold penthouse, so was he. Clara spent 3 days avoiding Ethan, 3 days burying herself in work and meetings, in anything that kept her from thinking about the contract clause or the way he looked at her in his study. On the 4th day, she found him waiting in her office at dawn. "We need to talk," he said, "about how you trapped me. About how this whole marriage is designed so I can never leave." Her voice shook with fury. "Did you think I wouldn't find out?" He flinched. Actually flinched. "That clause wasn't my idea. My father added it without my knowledge. And I'm supposed to believe you?" "No." He stood, moving toward her with careful steps, like approaching a wounded animal. "You're supposed to let me fix it. I've already called the lawyers. The clause will be removed by end of day." Clara stared at him, searching for the lie. "Why?" "Because you were right about me. I do destroy soft things." His voice dropped to something raw. "But maybe I'm tired of being that person." Before she could respond, her phone rang. The hospital. Her father. The blood drained from her face. Ethan was moving before she could speak. Keys in hand, his other hand steadying her as her legs threatened to give out. "Come on. I'll drive." The car ride was a blur of city lights and racing heartbeats. Ethan broke every speed limit, his jaw tight, one hand gripping the wheel, the other covering hers on the seat between them. At the hospital, they found her father sitting up in bed, smiling. The specialist Ethan had hired stood beside him with good news. The surgery could happen. There was real hope. Clara collapsed into a chair, overwhelmed. Ethan stood in the doorway, watching her father's face light up as he talked about recovery, about the future. When her father finally fell asleep, Clara found Ethan in the hospital chapel, of all places. He sat alone in the empty room, head bowed, hands clasped. "I didn't know you prayed," she said softly. "I don't." He looked up, and his eyes were haunted. "I just needed somewhere quiet to think about all the people I've hurt." On the fourth night, she stood at the window where Ethan had stood, staring at the city lights, and made her decision. She grabbed her coat and keys, heading for the door. She was going to find him, to tell him she was willing to try, to see if two broken people could build something whole. But when she opened the door, her father's doctor was standing there, face grave. "Mrs. Sterling, you need to come to the hospital right now." "What happened?" "It's your father. There's been a complication. He's asking for you." Clara's world shattered. And Ethan, the one person she needed most, didn't even know where she was. The hospital walls pressed in on Clara, sterile white turning to gray in her peripheral vision. Her father lay in the ICU, machines breathing for him, his hand cold in hers. "The surgery triggered a cardiac event," the doctor explained, his words hollow and distant. "The next 48 hours are critical." Clara nodded, numb. She'd sent Ethan away, pushed him out when she needed him most. And now she sat alone, watching her father's chest rise and fall with mechanical precision. Her phone buzzed. Ethan's name lit the screen. She'll let it go to voicemail. Then another call. Another. On the fifth call, she finally answered. "Clara, where are you?" His voice was frantic. "Your assistant said you left hours ago?" "I've been losing my mind." "Hospital," she managed, voice cracking. "My father. There were complications. I'm on my way." "Ethan, you don't have to. I'm already in the car." He arrived 20 minutes later, still in yesterday's clothes, hair disheveled, eyes wild with worry. When he saw her sitting alone in the waiting room, something in his expression broke. He crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms. Clara shattered. All the fear, the exhaustion, the loneliness she'd been holding collapsed into his chest as she sobbed. He held her together, one hand cradling her head, the other wrapped around her waist, murmuring words she couldn't hear but felt in her bones. "I'm here," he whispered. "I'm not going anywhere, I promise." They stayed like that until her tears ran dry, until the sun set outside the windows, until a nurse finally came to tell them her father had stabilized. In the ICU, Clara's father opened his eyes and saw them standing together, Ethan's hand supporting Clara's back. He smiled weakly. "You came," he rasped. "Of course I came," Ethan said, moving closer. "You're family now." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Clara's father squeezed her hand. "He's a good man, Clara. I see it now. Don't let pride keep you from happiness." After her father drifted back to sleep, Ethan and Clara found themselves in the hospital cafeteria at 2 in the morning, sharing terrible coffee and worse vending machine sandwiches. "I was coming to find you," Clara admitted. "Before the doctor came, I was going to tell you I wanted to try, that I was tired of fighting what I feel." Ethan's hand stilled on his coffee cup. "What do you feel?" Terrified, confused, but also. She met his eyes. "Alive. For the first time in years, I feel alive when I'm with you, Clara." Her name was a prayer on his lips. "I never knew I was empty until you filled the spaces I didn't know existed." He reached across the table and she met him halfway. Their fingers intertwined, coffee forgotten, the rest of the world fading away. "So what do we do now?" she asked. "We start over. No more lies. No more games. Just us, figuring this out together." "Together," she repeated, testing the word. It felt right. They stayed at the hospital for 2 days, taking turns sleeping in waiting room chairs, sharing meals, talking through fears and hopes, and the future they were starting to build. Slowly, carefully, they were learning to trust. On the 3rd day, Clara's father was moved out of ICU. The crisis had passed. As Ethan drove them home, Clara felt lighter than she had in months, but when they walked into the penthouse, everything changed. Ethan's father, Richard Sterling, sat in the living room with two lawyers. His face was carved from stone, eyes cold and calculating. "Father," Ethan said, tension immediately flooding his body. "What are you doing here? Cleaning up your mess." Richard stood, dismissing the lawyers with a wave. "I've been informed about your little contract modification. It's giving away company shares to your wife like some lovesick fool. Those shares are mine to do with as I please, not when your judgment is this compromised." Richard turned to Clara, his gaze sharp as a blade. "Miss Hawthorne, you've played your part well. The devoted wife, the damsel in distress. But the game ends now." "This isn't a game," Clara said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Everything is a game." Richard pulled out a folder, tossing it on the table between them.
"Including your father's medical care."
Clara's blood froze. "What are you talking about? The specialist treating your father? The experimental procedure? It's all arranged and paid for by Sterling Enterprises. By me, not Ethan." He smiled, cruel and satisfied. "And if you don't sign the shares back over to my son and walk away from this marriage quietly, I'll withdraw all funding. Your father will never get the follow-up treatments he needs to survive." "You bastard," Ethan breathed, moving toward his father with murder in his eyes. "I'm a businessman," Richard corrected. "Something you've forgotten how to be." Clara felt the world tilt. All of it had been a lie. Not Ethan's kindness, but the foundation it was built on. His father had orchestrated everything, and now he was using her father's life as leverage. "Clara, don't listen to him," Ethan said desperately. "We'll find another way. Other doctors, other treatments." "There is no other way," Richard interrupted. "Dr. Chen is the only specialist in the country qualified for your father's condition. Without him, your father has 6 months at most." Clara's mind raced. 6 months, or a lifetime of knowing she'd abandoned the man she was falling in love with. "How long do I have to decide?" she asked, her voice hollow. "Clara, no." Ethan grabbed her hands. "Don't do this. We'll fight him together." 24 hours, Richard said. "After that, I withdraw funding." He left, taking his lawyers and his ultimatum with him. The silence he left behind was suffocating. "I won't let you sacrifice yourself," Ethan said fiercely. "There has to be another way. Your father controls everything. The hospitals, the specialists, the treatments. He'll make sure no one else helps us." Clara's voice was eerily calm. "He's made his move. Now I have to make mine." "What are you talking about?" She pulled away from him, moving to the window, wrapping her arms around herself like armor. "I'm going to sign the papers. I'm going to walk away." "No." The word was torn from him. "I'll give up the company. I'll walk away from all of it. We'll start over." "And my father dies while we play house?" She turned to face him, tears streaming down her face. "I can't do that. I won't." "Then marry me for real." Ethan crossed to her, desperate, taking her face in his hands. "Not because of contracts or companies or duty. Marry me because I love you, because I choose you, because I can't imagine my life without you in it." The words she'd longed to hear, offered too late. "You love me? I'm completely, terrifyingly in love with you. And I know I don't deserve you, that I've done everything wrong from the start. But if you give me a chance, I swear I'll spend every day proving that this is real." Clara sobbed, pressing her forehead to his. "I love you too. That's why I have to let you go." No, Clara, please. Your father will destroy you if I stay. He'll take the company, your legacy, everything you've worked for. I don't care about any of it without you. You say that now? But in 5 years, 10 years, when you realize what you've lost, you'll resent me, and I can't live with that." She kissed him then, pouring everything she felt into it. All the love, the longing, the grief of what they could have been. Ethan kissed her back like a drowning man, like she was air and water and life itself. When they broke apart, both were crying. "One more night," she whispered. "Me one more night with you before the world tears us apart." That night, they lay tangled together in Ethan's bed. Clothed but intimate, holding each other like gravity might stop working. They talked until dawn, memorizing each other's voices, storing up memories for the wasteland ahead. "Run away with me," Ethan whispered against her hair. "Tonight, right now, we'll disappear. Start over somewhere he can't find us, and my father."
"Right!"
His silence was answer enough. When morning came, Clara slipped from his arms while he slept. She couldn't bear to see his face when she left. She dressed quietly, gathered her things, and placed the signed contract on the table. Sighed it. She left a note. "You were right about one thing. I do deserve better than you. I deserve a man who doesn't have to choose between me and his father, who doesn't have to sacrifice everything to be with me. But you also deserve better than me. You deserve someone brave enough to stay. I'm sorry I wasn't that person. I'll love you forever. That's why I'm letting you go." Clara, she made it to the elevator before she heard his door slam open. Heard him call her name with anguish that shattered her resolve. But she didn't turn back. The elevator doors closed on his devastated face, and Clara collapsed against the wall, grief ripping through her like a physical wound. She went straight to the hospital, to her father's room, and broke down. He held her while she sobbed, stroking her hair, whispering comfort he couldn't possibly mean. "You did the right thing," he said. "Then why does it feel like dying?"
Hour later.
Her phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello. Mrs. Sterling." The voice was cold, professional. "This is Richard Sterling's attorney. Your contract has been received and processed. The divorce will be finalized. Within 30 days, Dr. Chen will continue your father's treatment as agreed." "Thank you," she managed. "There's one more thing. Mr. Sterling Jr. has been removed as CEO of Sterling Enterprises effective immediately. His father felt he was too compromised to lead. He's been offered a position in the London office with the expectation he'll accept and relocate within the week." The phone slipped from Clara's hand. Ethan's father hadn't just separated them. He'd destroyed Ethan's entire world, and it was all her fault. 3 weeks passed like years. Clara threw herself into work, designing interfaces until her eyes burned, until exhaustion pulled her under. But every night, she dreamed of Ethan, his hands, his voice, the way he'd looked at her like she was his salvation. She heard through the industry grapevine that he'd refused the London position, that he'd walked away from Sterling Enterprises entirely. The business world was aflame with speculation about where Ethan Sterling had disappeared to. Clara tried not to care, tried to focus on her father's recovery, which was progressing beautifully under Dr. Chen's care. Every healthy report should have filled her with joy. Instead, it felt like another piece of evidence in her guilt. She'd saved her father by destroying the man she loved. On a rainy Thursday evening, Clara worked late in her office. Most of the building was empty, just her and the cleaning crew. She was deep in code when her office door opened. She looked up, and her heart stopped. Ethan stood in the doorway, soaked from the rain, looking like he'd been through hell. His eyes were shadowed, his jaw rough with stubble, his clothes rumpled. But when he looked at her, his gaze held the same intensity that had haunted her dreams. "You're a difficult woman to track down," he said, his voice rough. "What are you doing here?" "Fighting for us." He crossed the room, and Clara stood, her body betraying her by swaying toward him. "There is no us. I signed the papers. You got your company back. I don't want the company. I never wanted it." He stopped inches from her, close enough that she could feel his heat. "I want you. Ethan, we can't." "Your father will—" "My father," he interrupted, voice hard as stone, "no longer has any power over me. I quit. Walked away from everything. And then I started digging." Pulled out his phone, showing her documents, emails, bank transfers. "My father's been embezzling from Sterling Enterprises for years. Millions hidden in offshore accounts. When I threatened to expose him, he resigned immediately. The board voted me back as CEO this morning." Clara's mind reeled. "You blackmailed your own father?" "I fought for what's mine." "And you're mine, Clara. Just like I'm yours. It's not that simple." "It's exactly that simple." He cupped her face, his thumb brushing away tears she didn't know she'd shed. "I love you." "You love me? Everything else is just noise. But your father still controls my father's treatment." "No, he doesn't." Ethan's smile was sharp, victorious. "I bought the hospital. All of it. Your father's treatment is guaranteed for life. My father has no leverage anymore. Clara stared at him, barely breathing. You bought a hospital? I'd buy the whole damn world if it meant keeping you. She laughed, the sound breaking into a sob. You're insane. About you. Absolutely. Kissed her then, and it was nothing like their first kiss. This was raw, desperate, full of 3 weeks of longing and loss. Clara melted into him, her hands fisting in his wet shirt, pulling him closer. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Ethan pressed his forehead to hers. Come home with me. Not to the penthouse. I bought us a house. Something that's ours. Not tainted by my family or the past. Somewhere we can start fresh. I'm scared, she admitted. What if we can't make this work? Then we'll fail together. But Clara, I'd rather fail with you than succeed with anyone else. She was about to answer when her phone rang. The hospital, her blood froze as she answered. Ethan watched her face drain of color, his hand immediately reaching for hers. What is it? My father. He's had another cardiac event. They're taking him into emergency surgery now. The drive to the hospital was a nightmare of traffic and rain and Clara's rising panic. Ethan held her hand the entire way, his presence the only thing keeping her anchored at the hospital. Dr. Chen met them with a grave expression. The surgery was successful, but there's something you need to know. He hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. Your father's condition has been deteriorating faster than we expected. The embezzlement investigation into Richard Sterling revealed something else. Someone has been interfering with your father's medication. Clara's world tilted. What do you mean, interfering? Swapping his prescriptions with placebos. It's been going on for months, accelerating his decline. Who would do that? But even as she asked, she knew Ethan's face had gone white. My father. He wanted leverage over you. Wanted to make sure your father stayed sick so you'd stay compliant. The rage that filled Clara was incandescent. She turned to Ethan, and for a moment, he flinched from the fury in her eyes. Your father almost killed mine, I know, and I will make him pay for every second of suffering he caused. How? He's already resigned. He's already lost. No. Ethan's voice was steel wrapped in ice. He still has his freedom. His reputation, his legacy. I'm going to take all of it. Over the next 72 hours, Ethan waged war on his father. He released the embezzlement evidence to the authorities. He gave interviews to every major news outlet, exposing Richard Sterling's crimes in detail. He testified before the board, ensuring his father would be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Clara watched him burn his family's name to the ground to protect hers, and her heart broke and healed simultaneously. When Richard Sterling was finally arrested, Ethan stood beside Clara outside the courthouse, facing a wall of cameras. She'd expected him to gloat, to claim victory. Instead, he looked exhausted, grieving the father he'd once loved and the monster he'd become. I'm sorry, he said quietly to Clara as they walked away. Sorry you had to witness this. Sorry my family brought so much pain to yours. It's not your fault, isn't it? I knew what he was capable of. I just never thought he'd go this far. They went back to the hospital, where Clara's father was recovering. The real medications were working now, and his improvement was remarkable. When he saw them together, he smiled. Came back, he said to Ethan. I never really left, sir. I just needed to clean up some messes first. He loves her, Clara's father said. Anyone can see it. And she loves him, though she's too stubborn to admit it easily. I'm sitting right here, Clara protested. Then tell him, daughter. Tell him what your heart knows. Clara looked at Ethan, at the man who'd destroyed his own father to save hers, who'd walked away from everything for the chance to be with her, who'd fought through hell and come back bleeding but unbowed. I love you, she said. I love your strength and your vulnerability. I love that you're broken and trying to be whole. I love that you fight for the people you care about, even when it costs you everything, Clara. Her name was a benediction. Marry me again. For real this time. No contracts, no leverage, no games. Just us, choosing each other every day for the rest of our lives. Yes, she whispered. Yes, to all of it. He kissed her there in the hospital room. With her father watching and blessing them, and for the first time in both their lives, they felt like they'd finally come home. But their peace was short-lived. That night, as they left the hospital, a car screeched to a stop beside them. Vanessa stepped out, her face twisted with rage and something darker. In her hand, she held a gun. You destroyed him, she screamed at Ethan. Richard promised me if I helped him. If I fed him information about you and Clara, he'd make me CEO. Now he's in prison, and I have nothing. Vanessa, put the gun down, Ethan said calmly, moving in front of Clara. Why should I? You took everything from me. I loved you once, Ethan said quietly. But you betrayed that love the moment you chose power over people. Don't make this worse. Worse. You've already ruined my life. Her hand shook, the gun wavering between them. Clara stepped around Ethan, despite his attempts to keep her behind him. Shoot me if you want, Clara said, her voice steady. But it won't change anything. Power built on lies always crumbles. We're proof of that. For a long moment, Vanessa stared at them. Then her hand lowered and she collapsed against the car. Sobbing, security arrived moments later, taking Vanessa into custody. As they drove away, Ethan pulled Clara into his arms, trembling. Don't ever do that again, he said hoarsely. Don't ever put yourself in danger like that. I wasn't going to let her hurt you. I can't lose you. Not now. Not ever. They held each other in the parking lot. Two people who'd survived their families, their pasts, and each other's demons. Finally free to build something real. But as they drove home, Clara noticed Ethan's hands shaking on the wheel. Noticed the way his breath came too fast. Pull over, she said gently. He did, and the moment the car stopped, he shattered. All the grief, the anger, the trauma of the past month crashed over him. Clara held him while he broke, the way he'd held her so many times before. I destroyed my father, he said between gasps. I sent him to prison. What kind of son does that? The kind who protects the people he loves. The kind who knows justice matters more than blood. I'm not sure I know who I am anymore. Then we'll figure it out together. That's what love is, Ethan. Holding each other through the breaking and the healing. They sat in the car until dawn, talking through everything they'd survived, grieving what was lost, hoping for what could be built. When the sun rose, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, Ethan turned to her with red-rimmed eyes and something like peace in his expression. Let's go home. Home, Clara agreed, and for the first time, the word felt true. 6 months later, Clara stood in the kitchen of their new house. Sunlight streaming through windows that overlooked a garden Ethan had planted himself. Coffee brewing, music playing softly, the sound of him working in his study down the hall. Ordinary moments that felt like miracles. They'd rebuilt everything from scratch. Ethan had restructured Sterling Enterprises, removing every trace of his father's corruption, focusing the company on ethical innovation. Clara had launched her own design firm, creating interfaces that prioritized accessibility and human connection. They worked side by side, partners in every sense of the word. But healing wasn't linear. Some nights, Ethan woke gasping from nightmares about his father. Some days, Clara found herself frozen with anxiety that it might all disappear. They learned to hold space for each other's broken pieces, to be patient with the jagged edges that hadn't smoothed yet. Clara's father had made full recovery and walked her down the aisle at their real wedding. A small ceremony with only the people who truly mattered. No press, no spectacle, just love witnessed by those who believed in it. On this particular morning, Clara was working on a new project when her phone rang. An unknown number, but something made her answer. Mrs. Sterling, this is Officer Reynolds from the state prison. I'm calling about your father-in-law, Richard Sterling. Clara's blood chilled. What about him? He's requested to see you and your husband. He's dying. Stage 4 cancer. The doctors give him weeks at most. She found Ethan in his study, told him the news, and watched his face cycle through shock, grief, anger, and finally, a terrible resignation. I don't want to see him, he said. I don't owe him anything. I know. But you might regret it if you don't. Would you come with me? Always. The prison was gray and cold, smelling of disinfectant and despair. Richard Sterling sat in the visiting room in an orange jumpsuit, looking 20 years older than the last time they'd seen him. The powerful titan of industry reduced to a dying man with too many regrets. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice weak. "I wasn't sure you would." Ethan said nothing, his hand tight around Clara's under the table. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Richard continued. "I don't deserve it. I destroyed lives, including my own son's, because I thought power was worth any price. I was wrong. Is that supposed to make this better?" Ethan's voice was hollow. "You tried to kill Clara's father. You manipulated us, controlled us, hurt everyone around you. And now that you're dying, you want absolution. No, I want you to learn from my mistakes." Richard looked at Clara. "I see the way he looks at you, the way you look at him. That love is real. Don't let anything corrupt it. Not ambition, not fear, not the need to win." "We won't," Clara said quietly. "We've already learned that lesson." Richard smiled sadly. "You're stronger than I ever was. Both of you." He turned back to Ethan. "I'm proud of what you've built. Proud of the man you became despite me, not because of me." Ethan's jaw worked, emotions warring across his face. Finally he spoke, his voice breaking. "I needed you to be better. I needed a father who chose me over power. Why couldn't you do that? Because I was broken long before you were born, and I didn't know how to fix myself. So I broke you too. I'm sorry, son. For all of it." The words Ethan had needed to hear his entire life. Arriving too late to change anything, but maybe, just maybe, early enough to offer closure, they left the prison with heavy hearts, but lighter souls. In the car, Ethan cried, and Clara held him, letting him grieve the father he'd wanted and the one he'd actually had. "Do you think he meant it?" Ethan asked. "The apology? Does it matter? You're already a better man than he ever was. You already chose love over power. That's your legacy, not his." "I want children someday," he said suddenly. "I want to be the father mine never was. I want to show them that love isn't weakness. That choosing people over power is the bravest thing you can do." "We will," Clara promised. "We'll build the family we both deserved." Richard Sterling died 3 weeks later. At his funeral, Ethan gave a eulogy that was honest without being cruel, acknowledging both the man his father had been and the pain he'd caused. It was an act of grace that allowed Ethan to finally let go. That night, in their bedroom, Clara found Ethan standing at the window, looking out at the garden. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, wrapping her arms around him from behind. "How everything had to break before it could be real. How I almost lost you because I was too proud and too scared to admit I needed you." He turned in her arms, cupping her face with gentle hands. "I spent so long thinking love was a transaction, that it had to be earned or negotiated or controlled. You taught me it's actually surrender. It's choosing to be vulnerable with someone and trusting they'll be careful with your heart." "You're careful with mine," Clara said, kissing him softly. "Every single day. And I'll keep being careful with it. For the rest of our lives." They made love slowly, tenderly, to people who'd survived hell and found heaven in each other's arms. Afterward, tangled together in the sheets, Clara traced the line of Ethan's jaw, memorizing him in the moonlight. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we'd actually hated each other?" she asked. "If the arranged marriage had stayed just a business deal?" "I think we would have destroyed each other," Ethan admitted. "Or destroyed ourselves trying to escape. Sometimes I think fate put us together because we were the only ones who could save each other. Heavy burden for fate to place on two broken people. Maybe. Broken people are the only ones who understand how to heal each other." Clara smiled against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. This man who'd been her enemy, her husband, her lover, her salvation. This man who chose her every single day, months turned into years. Clara's design firm flourished, creating interfaces that won awards for their humanity and innovation. Ethan transformed Sterling Enterprises into a company known for ethical practices and genuine care for its employees. They became the story people told about second chances, about love found in unexpected places. On their 5th anniversary, standing in the garden Ethan had planted that first year, surrounded by friends and family, Clara's father pulled them aside. "I used to think the arranged marriage was the biggest mistake I'd ever made," he admitted. "Forcing my daughter into a loveless union? But I was wrong. It wasn't a mistake. It was the greatest gift I could have given you both." "How do you figure that?" Ethan asked. "Because you had to fight for each other. Had to choose each other against all odds. That kind of love earned through fire is unbreakable." Clara looked at Ethan, seeing the boy who'd been too scared to love and the man who'd learned to be brave, seeing their past, their present, and their future reflected in his eyes. He's right," she said. "I wouldn't change a single moment. Not the pain, not the fear, not even the times I thought we'd never make it. Because all of it led us here." "To home," Ethan said. "To love," Clara added. They said together, as the sun set over their garden, painting the sky in shades of amber and gold. Two people who'd once been strangers, then enemies, then lovers, then partners, stood together facing whatever came next. They'd learned that love wasn't a transaction or a duty or a cage. Love was a choice made every day, in 1,000 small ways. It was holding someone through their nightmares and celebrating their dreams. It was being brave enough to be broken in front of each other and patient enough to help put the pieces back together. It was messy and complicated, sometimes painful. But it was also the most real thing either of them had ever known. Years later, when people asked them how they made it work, how they turned an arranged marriage into a love story, they'd smile and say the same thing. "We stopped fighting against each other and started fighting for each other. Everything else was just details. In the end, that was the truth of it. Two people who should have destroyed each other instead saved each other. Two people who were forced together by circumstance chose to stay together by love. And that choice, made every single day, was the most beautiful thing either of them had ever done." Clara and Ethan Sterling stood together in their garden, hands intertwined, hearts aligned. Proof that sometimes the most unexpected beginnings lead to the most extraordinary endings. And sometimes, the person you're forced to marry turns out to be the one who teaches you what love really means. The end.